We all search for that spark which fuels our desire to fully engage in our lives. We look for the courage to experience moments where we can come alive instead of watching life pass us by. You're listening to the Front Row Factor, leaving fear and insecurity behind by exploring stories of top performers that are living life in the front row. Get ready to stand up, step up, and live it up with your host, John Vroman.
Hey, Front Row family, John Vroman here. I'm super excited that you're with me today because I'm talking to one of my best friends, Mr. John Kane. And that makes this introduction almost impossible because I have 2 decades of stories and examples and experiences that I could pull from to share with you why this guy is so amazing and why you want to listen today. But I will tell you, if you're somebody that really wants to push your personal limits about what's possible in your life and you want to serve others along the way, if you're somebody that values relationships and you want a couple of strategies and ideas about how to create an incredible community that surrounds you so that you can do life together, this is the guy that you want to be listening to. This is an incredible interview. And man, I was so conflicted because there's 100 places I could have taken this interview today. We could have talked all about his massive impact that he's had on our charity over the last 10 years. And we could talk about the massive impact he's had on my personal life. I mean, here's a guy that from my early 20s, I looked up to. I wanted to be like John Kane. He was crushing it in business. He was crushing it in life. People loved this guy. He was serving at the highest level. He was making a real difference. But the thing that really always drew me to John was his ability to connect. He always had the best relationships, the best friends. I mean, the amount of social equity that this guy has is incredible. And I could give you 10 examples, real life examples as to why that is all true. But I will tell you that here's a guy that we're going to talk to today about this Ironman journey, about fundraising, about family. And I want you to pay attention to how many times he points the energy at other people, including me. I mean, he turns the interview around. He makes it about me. He makes it about this person and that person. He literally must mention 20 names throughout this interview of people that have made a big difference in his life. Now, here's a guy who is a coach to many, but he also has many coaches. He is a coach to many, but has many coaches. So he is not only extremely knowledgeable and extremely successful, but he is really open-minded and very open to learning from people constantly. So, man, we get into so much stuff today, from the time that he almost drowned and gave up on the Ironman and how he fought through that. So there's some mindset strategies. We talk about his secret weapon that really helped him finish the race, a specific person who we'll mention in this interview. We get into how he was able to raise $25,000. So if you ever wanted to raise money for Front Row Foundation or another charity or some other purpose in your life, we get into all that throughout this conversation. I wish this chat could have gone for 3 hours. My guess is we'll have John back on the show, but in the next 60 minutes, I know that if you listen to this show, that you'll walk away a better person and you'll want to be friends with John, just like so many. And so I'm so happy to bring John to you. If you know John, then you can never get enough of him. But if this is your first time hearing John or learning about John, well, then this is a true gift. So enjoy your time, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. John Kane. All right, everybody, I'm joined by one of my best buddies in the world, Mr. John Kane. Good morning, Johnny.
Good morning, John. How are you, brother?
Hey, man. I'm super excited to be talking with you today. This has been a long time coming. We're now probably 41-ish episodes in as we record this, and it's a perfect time to have you on the show. We've got so much to talk about, and I'm excited to dig into your world, man. Can you give us the brag to start? What's good in your life right now? I could share a bunch of stuff, but dude, I'd love for the audience, which many are raving fans of yours already, and some of them are just learning about you today. But dude, let's give them a little brag here about what's going on in your world.
Well, hey, I think it's wonderful to wake up every day and be able to be grateful. Thank God for the relationships, friendships, great work to do. And I would say that feeling blessed in so many areas. I think about the work we used to do together at Cutco, and there's great things happening there. Leaders being developed, people being impacted, so many great things. I know you had John Ruhlin recently on your podcast, seeing what's happening there. And just seeing the world just kind of recognize some of the great things happening here. So it feels good when your work is being recognized. Feels great when your family is healthy. Tracy and the kids and I just went to Maine and spent some time just retreating and rejuvenating, and just simple times of being together and appreciating what it's like to have a young family. Tracy, as many of you know, is a yoga instructor and has brought health and some many cool elements to our lifestyle that I very likely may never have incorporated. And Johnny's 10, Matthew is 8, and Natalie is 5. And I'm keenly aware of the fact that these moments are fleeting, that they are growing up and they are starting to get interested in other things. And I am excited about, working hard to capture this precious time with my family. And that ties into one of the things I'm so excited about, which is being able to support you in the upcoming Dad's Retreat in October. I think it's amazing that you have set about creating an event that you'd want to attend. And, one of the things I love about you, John, is that, I think it's funny that you recognize that there are areas of your life you can grow in. And so what you do is go out and create an event to support areas you're excited about growing in. And I am so excited about the group of men that are going to come together in October for that experience, the first experience. And it's great to kind of be a sounding board in that. So I just want to thank you for allowing me to be a part of that. I'm excited because, one of the other pet projects and passion projects this year has been to be able to be part of the team that's helping you put the Front Row Factor book together. And I want to thank you again for including me in that process. And it's been fun watching you and Sarah Baker Andrus and your team put together an incredible first draft, and I'm excited for the world to see that. So that's good. Brother, so many good things, but I listened to the last podcast. I believe it was Rachel Lippman, and that podcast, I listened to it on a walk in Maine, and I found myself crying on that walk, so emotional about the greatness that has been the Front Row Foundation. When you kind of threw your stone into the water 11 years ago with wanting to make a difference, I think about the ripple effect of that. And that's an awesome thing in my life. And the Front Row philosophy, it's really aligned with things like faith and family. And it's just such a great complement to so many things. So, man, grateful for all these great things. So
there's a lot we could talk about, isn't there? There's a lot we could talk about. I think here's what's awesome, man, is I hear you talk about what's great in your life. What's fun for me to hear and very Johnny-esque for you to do this is to shine the light on the book project and the Dad's Retreat through your update. And not only are you very complimentary with people that are in your front row, people that you have a chance to influence and impact in your life. And everybody listening who knows you would agree with that. But it also goes to, for me, it demonstrates how we've managed to, through our friendship, integrate our worlds together in some really fun, creative ways. And that's been really intentional for us as friends, that we both believe in building with friends. And I think we've done that really well together, where we said, hey, not only can we get our families together and go swimming on a weekend, but how could we find ways to work together throughout the week, bring our strengths to the table and really impact others? And you've been critical for me. Of course, I have set all this up during the introduction, but in case somebody's jumping on right now and listening partway through, I will tell you that John and I, our relationship goes back 20 years. And this all started with Johnny, you being a great mentor to me in my life. And what I would say to somebody, if you were not around, then I was describing our friendship, is that I really believe that back in the day, you were able to notice something about me in my life and help to lift that up a little bit. I was in a tough spot and you came in and really helped to elevate my world. You helped show me what leadership was, how to connect with people. I would attribute many of my relationship skills that I have today that I'm very grateful for to you and watching how you interact with people. So when I look at your world and I think about what's really great, I think about the community that you've built. And I think about not only with your family and how great of a dad you are, but your work life and your community that surrounds you is pretty epic, dude. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. But just thanks for being on the show, man. I love you so much. I'm such a big fan of yours, as you know, and I'm excited to share you with the Front Row community, the extended community that doesn't know who you are yet, and to share your impact that you've had on the charity. This is going to be fun. So, Johnny, I don't even know where to begin, man, because we could do so many things here. We could talk about back in the early days of Front Row Foundation, how you were there since day one. We could talk about how you've helped raise money over the years for the charity in a million different ways. We could talk about some of the things that you've done to support the charity. Like when I think about big events, I think about your Ironman event. I think about how you were the #1 fundraiser for the charity, year to date, individual fundraiser. And as you know, man, as somebody who's been part of this thing forever, you understand the value of a front row transformation, the back row to front row moment of our life. Dude, can you share anyone with us a story of a time when you feel like you transformed from the back row to front row? Maybe that's the Ironman, maybe it's not, but just what comes to mind when we talk about that?
Well, I think one of the things that comes to mind is thinking about the roots of the front row. And when I think about seeing you as a young man, and I think you had gone off to Tony Robbins and came back, and you were really inspired about the idea that you were not serving the world in a way that you were excited about. You were pursuing your career and you were growing and you had all these plates spinning. But I remember specifically you going through a process where you said, hey, I want to do something more. And my recollection is that I think you thought about going to a soup kitchen or doing some different things. And where it all landed, which I think is funny, is the idea that, we loved going to concerts like Dave Matthews or Jimmy Buffett. And we had such a great time in our 20s just kind of hanging out. I think it's amazing that the result ended up being, we're going to use the thing that we love. You were going to use the thing that you love as your way of service. And it's really an expression of that. And I think my life moved from back row to front row, I think is one of the things I can think about is when this foundation was born. And I really think that in those opening moments, we had no idea what would come of this. I think that there was an idea, there was some energy. But the moment of transformation of me, I think, was the realization that our first fundraiser and gala, when we were at a gala while somebody, Effie Habucky, our first recipient, was experiencing a day in the front row. I think getting, that was like being moved from someone who donated to maybe, a charity supporting great causes like we did for many years with our friend Al DiLeonardo and the MS Walk and so many other great causes. But the idea of it becoming a real personal thing, feeling feeling rooted in this was amazing. And again, if you would go back and listen to Rachel's podcast, if anybody's wondering what the front row experience is all about, if you have children, if you have family, if you're human, listen to that podcast. And that podcast captures the essence of it. And I think one of the things that this front row experience has done, not just for me, but so many others, is it's brought people from being a spectator to being able to participate. And I think one of the things I'd want to share early in the podcast is that one of the intentions for today would be able to help people understand that everyone has an opportunity to have a front row seat in this organization, because essentially you can pick that and you can choose that. And that is one of the concepts and things that I'd be excited to talk more about today. There are a lot of things we can talk about, but I love the idea of keeping the Front Row Foundation and your work here at the center of it.
So, man, you're spot on with Rachel's story. Her mom, for everybody listening, her mom, Robin, who I was able to interview. Her daughter, Rachel, went to go see the Big Bang Theory TV show live taping. And her mom was talking about the impact that this event had on her daughter, and that the one idea of her daughter standing up and sharing in front of the live audience. You have to go listen to the whole thing to understand all the details and nuances of why that's so critical. But how that continues to impact her life to this very day, and how often she talks about her Front Row event. And for also anybody tuning in that doesn't know what the Front Row Foundation does, let me give you like the 10-second here. We help children and adults who have a life-threatening illness to experience the live event of their dreams from the front row. That might be a sporting event, a concert, a live taping of the Big Bang Theory TV show, whatever it might be. It's a live performance of some type. And so from day one, Johnny, as you were talking about, from our first event at the Sicklerville Fire Hall, when a couple hundred of our friends showed up and came out to support the launch of the Front Row, and our friend Micah Bucky's mother, Effie, went to go see Brooks and Dunn that night. I'm totally with you, and I'm aligned that was the moment we went and we took it another step further from just donating the $25 to your friend's page, which I think is a very important step. And I still do that step, today for all of the donations that come in, requests, because I know that's critical. And that's how we fund our events, is the money that comes in. But I also know that there's something else that happens when we step up in our lives and we get connected. And when we jump into the action and participate, that's what Rachel did. And that's what you've done so perfectly, is that you've participated in a massive way. You're a founding member of the Front Row Foundation because from day one, you have been an active participant in making these experiences possible through fundraising and through connections that you've given and all different ways that you've supported, and in a huge way with your ideas, your creativity, sitting around the table, serving as a board member, and the countless conversations that you and I have had. I mean, when you think about this, Johnny, how many hours of conversation do you think we've had about Front Row Foundation in the last 10 years? I mean, I've never asked you this question ever, but dude, if you had to quantify it, could you even put a number on there?
Yeah, I think the only person I may have talked to more about anything would be John Rulin, because he calls about 15 times a day with his wild ideas about selling lots of Cutco. So I'm going to say, I couldn't put a number on it, John, but I think what's evident in that is that this is not a forced thing. This has, I've said to you many times, I remember times early in the foundation when you were struggling with the idea that you had left a corporate job that you loved to go out and pursue your dream of speaking, and you were struggling. I think it'd be okay to share that you were struggling financially in that transition, and there was this whole thing where all of us on the board were saying, John, the Front Row is you. It's your brand. It's your idea. It's who you are. It's the gift that you've given to so many of us. We need you to step in here and really run and lead the thing. And the thing that was so interesting is watching your speaking career and watching your career build around the Front Row brand. I think why it's so natural to talk about it is it's because it's an expression of the love and gifts that you're giving the world. So it's impossible not to get together with you and for the conversation not to go toward the Front Row. And spend a little bit of time on the Front Row website and watch these stories. I think we're approaching almost 100 recipient experiences. Just watch it. Watch what happens when someone has a chance to experience the greatest day of their life in a time of intense struggle. It actually is brutal at times to watch these testimonials, to know that we've lost so many of these recipients that have had a chance to spend, that we've gotten to know, that have become part of our family, that have spent a day with. I think about Jeff Bry's event with Marissa, and how, you spend a day in the life with someone, their best day, and then they're not here. And we have a video, and their family has that book of memories. And how does it not come up in conversation? Once you've been here, Trent Booth and I were talking yesterday about the 3 experiences that he had a chance to volunteer on. And he talked about being at a concert last week, and his thoughts went to the Front Row. I think what makes the front row unique is that it is, and there's an expression of what we do, but there is a ripple effect, a reverberation that is massive, and it captures the heart and soul of so many people. So I would anticipate for moving forward, it's like, how can you not talk about it? It's like, how can you not talk about your kids? How can you not talk about something that you feel? And I'll never forget seeing the Today Show interview and watching that come alive and thinking we were a bunch of kids sitting around a kitchen table, and the Today Show is now in John's living room. It's surreal. And seeing what happened at last year's John's best year ever event in December, the idea that in a few minutes, $110,000 was raised for the foundation. When 10 years ago, if someone gave us a quarter, we were happy. So there's just, Dave Matthews has a song, So Much to Say, and there's just so much to say about it. I could keep going, but I might be running out of time. But that's my answer. That's my answer.
It is awesome, man. When you think about these experiences, you mentioned these folks, I have all these incredible memories that come flooding back into my brain. You mentioned Jeff Bry, Trent Booth. I remember these early experiences, and I certainly remember the Today Show airing. I think that what was great about the Today Show, Johnny, and I think you felt this many times before too, is that I think it really honored our community. For me, it was about sharing and honoring the message, not only with our community, but with all those new friends that were out there waiting for somebody or some organization to come along that aligns with their values. And I think that something that really fires us up is when we create a space for people to come together. I think we both value community building and being open enough to allow these folks to come in. And as we say in the charity, it's a forever thing. One of the things we wanted to make sure we did was it wasn't just about a day, which it sounds like it is, right? We create a day in the life of somebody. It's our best day ever. We send them to this event, but we want to be very intentional that that's not the end of our connection, that with the recipient and their family and their friends, that we can continue to connect and to live life differently. Speaking of living life differently, one of our mutual friends, Carrie Smolinski, just sent messages this morning. I saw on my phone, I woke up to a picture of him in Venice on a boat with his hands up. And here's a guy who lives life in the front row in a huge way. Carrie has been participated in experiences, and I know you and Carrie are very close. I just think about our massive community that we've helped create over the years. It's been pretty cool. So, Johnny, I want to get to this Ironman piece, and I know that you like to shine the light. I've opened that door a couple times now for you to talk about your Ironman, but it is with grand Johnny fashion that you are wanting to talk about others and those that we serve, and I love that. I love that about you, but I'm going to kind of pin you to the corner here and say, I want to talk about your Ironman because of a couple reasons. One is, I think it's amazing the transformation that you experienced through this Ironman. As somebody that had a front row seat to this process, I think it was amazing. I know you didn't talk about it a ton. It wasn't something that was broadcast widely. I kind of had to arm wrestle you to get you on the show here and talk about this a little bit. But because I think that you do spend a lot of time talking about others, and I've often said, I've talked about you 100 times before and on stage and the podcast about how one of the things that's so great. And I remember this very specific story is we were sitting down to have a conversation and you just asked me a bunch of questions, and it was question after question after question. I said, that was the greatest conversation we ever had. And then I realized that all you did was ask questions. And I was like, that's why it was such a great conversation. And that's your style, is you're interested in others. You want to highlight others, illuminate other people. But let's take a moment and talk about you, because I think this will inspire many people. I think this Ironman story will inspire a lot of people, because not only did you have a transformation, but you raised a ton of money for the charity. And I know there's a lot of people listening right now, Johnny, that also want to raise money for the charity, and they don't know how to do that, or they don't know all the possibilities of that. So this might create a space for them, maybe not only with just Front Row Foundation, but any charity they want in the world, but how to take something that we're doing in our own lives and make it purposeful. I want to talk a little bit about this and break it down. So can we go back to the beginning of this whole story, if you will? Take us to the moment where you decided to say yes to an Ironman. And let me set the stage here for everybody listening. If you don't know Johnny, you are 6 foot plus weighing in at 200 plus, and you're a big guy. And I say this because we're best buddies here, that when somebody would look at you, they would not probably have the first reaction of, that guy's probably an Ironman triathlete, because your physique, you're big, you're a big dude. And I don't think that most people put those together. So I just want to paint that picture, because I think this was, for me, it was like, holy crap, like this is a big commitment. So walk us back to the day when you said, I'm going to do this, and tell us what happened.
You're funny. I'll tell you a funny story that I forgot to include in my brag. So here's me telling something about me right now. Okay. So there you go. Maybe you'll leave me alone after that.
First time in your life. Great job.
Yeah. So here's the thing. My wife, Tracy, has been a yoga instructor for many years, 10 plus years, has done so much to train. And I got inspired this year about the idea of getting certified to teach yoga. And we're part of this community yoga studio, Shine Power Yoga. There's an incredible leader there, Wanda, in our community. And I've just loved this community. I love the thing. And I decided to engage and get certified to teach yoga, with the dream someday of being able to teach, do workshops with Tracy, have something that we do together and have in common. And it's fun. But there's a woman in the studio, Gina, and she's putting together a workshop called Yoga for Everybody. And she asked me to be on the poster of the thing, because it's like kind of like yoga for everybody. And they wanted my body up there to kind of show that it's not just 98-pound people that do yoga. And I thought it was kind of funny that I'm the poster child for that. So, yeah, many of you know, we've got a friend, Warren McDougall, and he's about to do his first Ironman. And when you look at Warren, you think Ironman, and his wife, Angie, is a multi-Ironman completer, and they were both big parts of the inspiration. But I just thought I'd share that. It's kind of funny. Yeah, I get bouncer sometimes, but not cyclist. But it's fun, and I guess part of what I want to share here is I had some really limiting thoughts around this as well. And maybe we'll get into some of that. But listen, I don't mind talking about it. But I think what was going to be important to share is that there were so many lessons along the way that I think are relevant to people who want to get involved in supporting the front row. And I just want to say this. One main point I would make. Last week, I saw Josh and Amy Mueller at their favorite event of the year. It was a picnic. Raise $1,000 for the front row doing a lip syncing contest. And here's what's interesting. They took the thing they love to do, which is to host this July 4th party, and they found a way to incorporate a front row fundraiser in, and they raised over $1,000, I think. And it would have been so easy just to go party, but they went and partied with a purpose. And that sets the background for some of what happened here. So what I'm going to attempt to do is share this part quickly, and you can answer whatever questions, ask me whatever questions you want to ask me. Simply put, I had a life experience in July of 2014 where there was a member of our local yoga community, the husband of a woman, and he passed away suddenly. And the woman had been really kind to my wife, Tracy, and I didn't really know them super well. I only met the gentleman one time. Tracy was actually out of town at Vitamix doing a corporate yoga training, and something compelled me to just go to the viewing. I knew nobody. And I went and I stood in line and I saw that just a few weeks earlier, this gentleman had done the Broad Street Run in Philadelphia. He was the picture of fitness and health. And it turns out he had been quietly battling cancer and got pneumonia over July 4th weekend and suddenly passed away, leaving behind a wife and 2 daughters. And I walked through that line, and what was interesting about it is I didn't know anybody, but as we walked through the line, and there were collages everywhere. And the collages reminded me of what we see in Vector offices and what we have on the walls of our home, of all these great experiences. And it just hit me that here was a guy, not yet 50 years old, leaving behind his family. And he had been so, health had been part of his life. Being an athlete had been part of his life. And something hit me and it was a couple of weeks that this was sticking with me, that, there are many areas of my life that I've given attention to, but I felt like I could have been doing a better job in this area of giving myself the gift of doing something physical. And I don't know if you remember this, but you and I had a breakfast where we sat down, and it was on a Monday morning in August, and I just poured my heart out to you, and I said, I'm ready to do something. I think I might play volleyball, or I might do, I didn't know what I wanted to do, but what happened a few hours later is I got a phone call from my friend Dustin Marks. Dustin had been a champion division manager at Vector and Cutco, and was a good friend of mine. And he was about to sign up to do an Ironman event in Lake Placid. At this point, I didn't have a bike, and I didn't know how to swim. I hadn't swum a lap ever. And he called me up and said, "Hey, I'm thinking about doing this next year. Do you want to do it with me?" And I can't really describe what happened, but something said yes inside of me. And what kind of came in my brain was, I wondered if there's some way I could connect doing this event with helping, just doing something for others. And of course, there's a natural connection that occurs with my front row experience and having raised money for the front row. But to be honest, it didn't start that way. It started out as I was thinking about this family, and I wondered if there'd be something I'd be able to do through the Ironman for this local family. The way it panned out is, it turned out that wasn't a path that made sense for a couple of reasons I won't get deeply into, but in a sense that just didn't materialize. But the decision point happened out of being at a place in life where I was feeling like I wanted to do something, and when the opportunity presented itself, it just felt right. I remember praying about it. I remember going home and talking to Tracy and the kids about it and saying, I know it sounds crazy, and feeling the support from friends and family right away. I had more than a few people tell me, this is, you don't know what you're getting yourself into here. And I made a decision at that point that for 60 days, I was just either going to run, bike, or swim. I borrowed your mountain bike. I don't know if you remember that. I didn't have a bike, and just started riding a mountain bike around. And I went to a pool at a hotel I was in and swam like 4 laps, and didn't feel so great. And I went for like a 1 mile run, and I had 364 days to train when I made the decision. And so that's what was happening around the time of getting started. That's how I made the decision. And if I were to share one thing with everyone here, is I would say to many people, I'm not sure if doing this is the best decision for somebody. But it was something that captured my heart. And I think one of the things to pay attention to is, if you're going to do some fundraising for the front row or anything else you're passionate about, you can align it with something you love to do, whether it's you like to play lawn games, or you like to have a picnic or a barbecue or a beef and beer, or you want to do a service project. There's infinite ways to step up. And one of my objectives today is to inspire someone to break the record. I think this record will be broken many, many times, and we never even promoted a record before. But I would really get excited about someone getting inspired to do huge personal fundraisers for the front row, or anything else you're passionate about in life. I think we, like you said, we donate to many other things besides front row, because there's a lot of great causes out there. So that's how it started, John. That was the spark. And I think it's interesting. It's like some things happen in life, they get our attention. Sometimes a conversation with a friend, stating your intentions or what you're thinking about. And then when opportunity comes, being a yes for that. And that's how it started.
I love that what you talked about was, when Dustin told you or invited you to the race, that you said something inside you said yes. And I think what's great is that you paid attention to that you noticed that you honored that. But that what's really cool is that it wasn't a absolute 100% yes, that it took a moment for you to consider it, to pray about it, to talk about it with your family, and to process it in a way that you could then fully commit to it also. I think that it just goes to show that we all have kind of a process, or that there's a little bit of a journey to a yes at times, that it's not always a resounding, absolutely 100%. It requires a little edging along and some thought and some checking in to be able to get there. And I also love when you talk about using this as a way to serve, because I think that's something that the Ironman by itself, there's no doubt that you could have trained and done that. But the fact that you immediately started thinking about how can I use this as a way to serve others, I think is just indicative. It's telling of our community, right? It's like that's very cultural in our community. And I think that it's something that you've brought to the community in a huge way, is this constant question of how do I use this journey here that I'm on, or this personal growth, whatever, whether it's yoga or Ironman or work or some other activity, to serve, and to help people along the way. Let's talk about, you mentioned these limiting beliefs, Johnny. So let's talk about that for a second. What limiting belief did you have? There might have been many, but what's one that comes to mind that you faced?
There was just really a dynamic of, it's kind of like, it reminds me of like when you see a mountain from far away and you say, oh, I could climb that. And then you get closer to it, or you start to climb and you realize it's a lot bigger and a lot higher than you thought it was. So within a few weeks, some self-doubt really started creeping in when, you would do a 2-mile run or a 3-mile run and be exhausted and think, wait, I'm going to have to do a marathon after I bike 112 miles and swim 2.4 miles. And the limiting beliefs crept in the pool when you were swimming a few laps and you were winded. And what I want to share is a concept here, which is an important part of this next part, which is the concept that we don't do anything by ourselves. We don't do anything great by ourselves. Two things happened in the first 60 days that shaped the entire experience. And I want to share that. I want to give recognition to Carl Drew. Carl Drew showed up at a front row fundraiser that Earl sponsored, a beef and beer, and he showed up knowing I had this goal with a whole carload full of equipment, because he had been a triathlete, that he gave me. It was hundreds of dollars worth of stuff. And then he came to my home for a weekend and took me and gave me swimming lessons. And the dramatic increase in my ability after just a few hours with Carl was radical. I would propose to you that if he hadn't, he went out of his way to help, and that he gave me his bike trainer. He did all these things. And so you gave me your mountain bike. There were these things that happened along the way that once the goal was there, it started to materialize. And it makes you think about who's front row in your life. Who are the people that show up or that you show up for when something big is happening? So that happened. Another thing that happened is I went to Cleveland for a auction that we had done at one of the front row events, and Angie and Warren McDougall came with Tracy and I. And I went out for a run, and I came back, and Angie is a veteran, seasoned triathlete. And I told her that, hey, for the last 60 days, I've been kind of doing it on my own. And she looked me in the eye and she said, you will never be able to do this without coaching. She says, you're not going to be able to take this journey without a coach. You need a coach. And I didn't understand that. I understand the value of coaching, but she really brought it home. She said, you don't need to think about all this stuff. You need someone who knows what they're doing to give you the plan, and then you go work the plan. And she described her experience of coaching. Now, I had heard that from a few people, but it really landed. And I'm so grateful for Angie sharing that with me. I went out and I hired a coach, and that coach was someone who was on the U.S. triathlon team. He was a good friend of my friend Mike McFadden, who had completed the Ironman in Lake Placid. And so what happened very quickly after setting this goal, it was almost like I felt like a group of people rallied around to help it happen. And I share that because it was the same way with the fundraising. And I know one of the things we're going to get to today is, hey, how did we raise $25,000 in 10 days? And I want to let you know, we didn't raise $25,000 in 10 days. We raised it over 300 days, because one of the things that I started doing is I was so afraid that I would quit. I was afraid that I would stop because I was scared of this, that I just started telling people about it. And it made it hard to quit, made it hard to back down. And once people started rallying, there were many dark moments on the journey. One I'll share that happened. You had a front row seat too. But I just would say that the lesson here is I did not do an Ironman. About 500 people did. The people who donated, the people who supported. There were countless things. Last story I'll tell is it's amazing what appears in your life when you're moving in a direction. I was at a 4-year-old birthday party. You've been to a few of those, right, Johnny?
A couple.
They're absolutely brutal, right? I mean, they're fun, but and so I brought a book and I was reading a book and a guy noticed me reading the book and it was a book about triathlon. And he said, the guy just happened to be a several-time Kona qualifier, and he offered to give me swimming lessons for free in my local pool. He worked a few minutes from the office, Mike Gudzinski. And here it was. I was just at a birthday party, and here the perfect swimming coach arises and offers to give me free lessons. Coincidence? I think not. I think one of the messages today is like, set your sights on something big, and it's amazing how things rally around you. And it was overwhelming, the support. And that's the real story. It's not the story of me doing this. It's the story of what happens, I think, when you set about doing something big.
That's awesome. Let's go back to that. You mentioned a dark moment, a low point. Where did you really hit the point in the journey where you're like, I'm not sure about this? What was the ultimate, you could call it a failure, a setback, a challenge that you faced?
So I trained from September to March or April, and the training was a lot alone, swimming in a pool, riding on a bike trainer, and it was never really real world conditions. And I signed up for my first triathlon. It was an Olympic distance, reasonable distance. And the day, I had talked to my coach, and the day before he said, do you have your wetsuit and have you got it in the water in your wetsuit? And I said, no, I've never swam in the open water before. And you may remember this. John and I often do a kid swap where he brings his kids to my house, so I bring my kids over to John's house, and we just hang with the kids, saves us money on babysitters, and I have one of the greatest people on the planet influencing my children. So it's kind of a cool deal. So we do this thing, and I said, John, I have a triathlon I got to do on Sunday. Can you come to my house? And you came over, and we're hanging with the kids, and I got my wetsuit, and I went to this lake, and I got in the water, and it was the first time ever swimming in open water, and I had a complete panic attack. I felt like the walls were closing in around me. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't swim 20 yards, and it was so different than swimming in a pool, and I had a total meltdown. I don't even think I knew what a panic attack was before, but I felt it. And I remember thinking, I've trained for 9 months. People know I'm doing this, and I can't swim 20 yards. And it was just so mentally, emotionally devastating. And I remember coming back home, walking into my kitchen. You were standing there, and I was like, I told you what happened. And the story of what happened that I want to share, tie it into it, is that was the dark moment. The bright moment was when you agreed, unplanned, to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning the next day and ride along with me and just show up and be there for that first event. And dude, I was scared. And, there's just a feeling like you might be letting all these people down. I didn't want to let you down. It's like, and you start saying, who am I to think I could do this? And you have all of these things kind of creeping into your head. And it was dark and it was low. And, but at the end of that day, it's amazing with some love and support and just a day to kind of process some of that. It all worked out. And it was just a reminder to me that so many times when we're in a valley or a dark place, that there's something bright right around the corner. And I almost quit that day. And because I really was thinking, like, this is ridiculous. What am I doing here? I'm not built for this. I'm not this. I'm not that. All those things. What was hard to quit on was you and the front row and the people that I knew. It was hard to quit on the community. I would have there's a chance I might have quit on myself, John, but it was hard to quit on the community. And that's what happened.
What shifted then for you that pulled you through when you were like, you had the panic attack, you faced that realization that all these people knew you were doing the Ironman, but you struggled to do the 20 yards. What shifted then in your mind? How did you overcome that and get through?
Well, it's a story of another relationship. I have a good friend, Todd Mertz, and he works with Shinzen Young, who's kind of regarded as like the father of basic mindfulness. And I didn't really even understand what that was. And I talked to my friend Todd, and I told him that I was having serious doubts about being able to do this. And I told him how the short distance was hard. I can't imagine doing a half or a full Ironman. And I had full doubts. And he said, hey, I think you should talk to my friend Juliana Ray. And I said, well, what does she do? He said, well, she's a mindfulness coach. And that sounded like a bunch of voodoo to me. And I probably had some limiting beliefs because I kind of always viewed like mindfulness and meditation as maybe a front to my Christian faith, which would be like, it's like, well, I have prayer. Why would I need meditation and mindfulness? And what I didn't understand is that they're two totally different things. And what I learned from Juliana Ray is that actually a solid prayer life can really be aligned with mindfulness. It's like saying you can eat broccoli and spinach and it's not going to hurt you. You know what I mean? They're both can be good things. And the story is, in the final stages of my training, I hired a coach and I hired Juliana to support me in training. And the crazy thing is, from the whole Ironman experience, the greatest gift of that has been the leadership training I received from Juliana in this process. You and I did a workshop at one of our events where we talked about this, and we had Juliana on stage. But what Juliana taught me is how to manage the moment, how to manage fear, how to manage physical pain and discomfort, how to not let my mind be a million places. Now, where this has shown up is, it's great for a race, but it's also great for everyday life. And what that training has helped me to do is actually to be more front row in my own life by actually being present to what's going on and not being a million other places. So very grateful for that relationship coming in. And again, it's another story of like things kept showing up and people kept showing up at the right time. And I would say that, the day before we did the actual race in Lake Placid, we spent 3 hours on the phone, 2 to 3 hours on the phone, walking through every bit of the race. We did like a mental walkthrough of those 17 hours and what that would be like. And I would just say that there's a lot to be said about planning and mentally preparing for things. And all the physical training in the world, all the swimming, biking, and running couldn't have prepared me the way Juliana did through her sharing her gift, or her craft. And so that was a breakthrough. That was something that happened.
That was huge. Juliana, for those listening, number 3 on the Front Row Factor podcast, the most downloaded episode that we have to date. We've had some pretty epic guests, but number 3, Juliana Ray, check it out. Perspective, Mindfulness, and Peak Performance is the name. Make sure to check out that show and you'll get some of what Johnny's talking about and the strategies, which I have personally utilized in different areas of my life, including an ultra run. So I can endorse completely what you're saying, JK. So thank you for sharing Juliana with me because she helped save my butt at a later date too. So let's skip ahead here to the actual Ironman day. And I know that in a short period of time that we have for this show, JK, that we're not able to really do the entire experience justice. I mean, we think about how to talk about your whole history with Front Row Foundation, the amazing journey of the Ironman, and then talk about the fundraising. There's a lot in there. But let's talk about the actual day, because fast forward, people are probably guessing by now, you are an Ironman finisher. But take us to that day where all this work came to fruition, and what was that experience like? How long did it take you to do this entire thing? Was it a walk in the park by the time that you had all these amazing coaches and tools? What was that experience like on game day?
I would say this. The best part about that experience that I have is, and this is something this is the most profound thing I could share about that. I was so nervous and amped up, I almost thought about not bringing my family with me, Tracy and the 3 kids. Now, Tracy had done my laundry, my 2 pairs of bike shorts a million times. I mean, the family had gone through a little bit of endurance training as well with Dad doing this. And I almost didn't bring them because I thought, like, I don't want to be distracted and I don't want to be, I got in my head thinking of all the reasons why I shouldn't bring my family. And that would have been the single worst decision. I have made some bad decisions. That's probably well documented. But I think that was almost a horrible decision. But we ended up having this weekend in Lake Placid where, we got up there, got checked in, we went swimming in the lake. I hired a fishing guide and we went fishing with the kids and we had dinner. And then, unbelievably, my friends Angie and Warren McDougall flew from where they live in the middle of very far in Canada. I forget the name of the town that they live in. Do you know the name of the town?
Coldstream, right?
Yeah. So
Coldstream,
they
BC,
got on
yeah.
three flights, went to a different country, and showed up to cheer that race on. And it was like, whoa, definitely can't quit now. We got people, they showed
International
up.
representation.
Yeah, it was crazy. My friend Mike McFadden came up, and there were people there that just showed up, and it was such a great time. Here's the story, and it's like so many things in life. People in our business, they work to get a silver cup, and they'll all tell you the silver cup means nothing to them. It was the journey. It was the people. It was the thing. Honestly, the thing that I treasure most from this experience is an essay my son John wrote 4 months later to his class in third grade, where he talked about his view of this experience, where I had a chance to realize how much of an impact watching me do this had on his 8-year-old mind. And what I love is looking behind my desk at the picture that John Ruland gave me and seeing the recipients that were able to benefit from the experience. The day itself went as planned. I got in the water, swam. There was a little thunder and lightning. They said it was the worst weather they ever experienced. And a lot of the professional triathletes quit because they think they knew their time was going to be bad. It was a really dangerous day out there. But luckily, I'm really slow, so it favored me. And I just kind of clipped along. I went 10 miles an hour on the bike for a while, and there's all these cutoffs. I made the bike cutoff by like 15 minutes. If I'd gotten a flat tire, I probably wouldn't have been able to finish it. And then I went out and started the run course, and I ran until I knew I could walk the rest of the way and still make it. So I ran the first 18 miles. My coach was there. Every time I turned around a corner, there was Warren and Angie cheering. Tracy and the kids were cheering. And the day was a reminder that it was a day with friends and family. It wasn't even about the race. It took 16 hours and 45 minutes. You have to finish it under 17 hours. So, I didn't break any world records there. But seeing so many people out, what was cool about the day was the encouragement from people. It just felt great to be part of that community for a day. And just feeling love from friends and family. That's what made it great. My friend Dustin was there, and he did a great job. It was so many good things. So the day, a lot of people said if you do the training, the day just becomes an afterthought, if you will, and you'll be ready. And, the funny thing was I never felt ready to do this, even up until the time. But by doing the work, it turned out the coaches were right. I was. And just grateful for all the help and support along the way.
I love that you just said, I never felt ready. I think so many people could relate to that thought, JK, of not feeling ready for it. But if you keep putting one foot in front of the other, if you keep training, if you keep getting the right coaches and the right team and the right advice, be open-minded and just have faith as you go through, have a purpose connected to it, that the whole point about feeling ready is it's maybe it's not important. I mean, I think that, when you get to race day, you probably feel ready from the sense of like, I put in the work, right? Would you say that's the case? Would you say you look back and say, I put in the work. I know that I've run, I've swam, I've biked, on that day. Did you feel, I'm curious, like that morning, did you say, I'm ready for this? Or did you?
I just was excited that it was here. There was what I did it the night before. We all had dinner. It was Angie and Warren, and we all had a family dinner. And then I said, I actually stayed the last night in a house full of triathletes, and I was in a little bunk bed like the one I grew up in. And I remember I have a picture of me kind of laying there at like 7:00 at night. And I remember just feeling a lot of peace around the process. I knew that whatever happened the next day, the good news is that the money was already donated, whether I finished it or not.
Wasn't contingent. Yeah.
I didn't want to let anybody down, but the recipients were going to be taken care of. But I wanted to do a good job, and I just put in place the training. I put in place the physical and the mindfulness training, and the experts were right. It turns out if you eat properly and do the workouts and do the thing, it works. And, I think the message here is it's kind of like, well, I really believe if someone wanted to do this, anybody could do it. Our good friend Drew Frank is about to do his first one here coming up in a few months. That's fun. And, I know there's a lot of people out there who kind of had a perspective. I heard this from people. Wow, that's really selfish. You're doing an Ironman. It's all about you, or you're taking all that time away from family. And sometimes what I want to encourage people is, and I was having this conversation with my good friend Ryan Trembler last night. I said, sometimes we need to be selfish to be able to serve and take care of people the way that we want to. And this gift of time, I think about so many of the outcomes. There was so many breakthroughs I had at work and in problems I had when I was out running or swimming. I given myself a space to just think and be, giving myself that canvas. There's so many days where you get up and you hurry into the day and you check your email and you do all these things and it's intense and it's stressful. I say this humbly, but I think some of the best work I'm thinking I did happen because I was going through this experience. It brought out a creative side of me, and I just felt good about myself and what I was doing. I don't mind telling you that there have been times since the race where I felt like, okay, what's next? And there was a little bit of a hangover after all that of like, okay, that was pretty intense. And so yoga has been a good solution to that because it's something where you take care of yourself and it's not all consuming, but it's very positive. So, I just share some of that because those were some of the things that happened around the experience. But overall, I'm just so glad to have felt so much love and support from many people. And I want to thank everybody who donated. And, I don't know if you want to talk about that process, but I'm happy to share anything about the fundraising process if it could help others to get inspired about that.
I do. And before the last thing on the race itself, can you give us some statistics for the folks out there that love numbers? Can you tell us how tall are you? How much did you weigh on race day? And how long did it take you to complete each part of the race?
So I'm 6'2". I was 250 pounds on race day with my shoes on. And I so it's probably like 249. And the swim was, I don't know exactly, under 2 hours. The bike was about 8 hours and 40 minutes, I think, or 7 minutes. And the run was about 6 hours. So the longest part's the bike. I mean, people think that the swimming's the hard part and the run. But the funny thing is the bike is the really challenging part. And there are a lot of hills, and dragging my butt up hills was not that was I think the hardest part. But
well, to me, the swim is scary. Like, to me, as a I do not do triathlons, but I stick to the road running or the trail running. But for me, it's like you can fall off the bike and maybe get hurt. And by the way, I know I'm totally underplaying this for the point that I'm going to make, but like, you could fall down when you're running and skin a knee. But the swimming, it's like you could drown out there. Like, you could be in the middle of a lake and decide, I don't have the energy, or a cramp, or somebody kicks you in the head. To me, the swim is the scary piece. Plus, when I jump in a pool and I swim like 8 laps, I'm exhausted. And I think, how did Johnny do this for 2 hours? That's insane.
I get it. I totally get it. But again, it's a testimony to, there's so many things in your life that you probably thought. There's people that think public speaking, they have panic attacks.
That's right. That's
a brutal thing. Then people get up and speak. I mean, it's time. You just put the time in, and you build confidence. And one of the things that's kind of cool about just a tip is that if you swim in cold water and you wear a wetsuit, it does give you a little buoyancy. So you might not sink. So swimming in a colder lake or body of water and you can wear a wetsuit, that's a little tip that helps. The other funny thing here's another thing about teamwork, right? When you're swimming by yourself, it's harder, but when everybody's in the water together, it's like it pulls you like a river. So everybody's pulling and you kind of get drafted in. Swimming in the race was way easier than swimming by myself because you felt like you were being pulled. Do you ever make a whirlpool in your swimming pool?
Yeah.
Well, imagine what, you feel you can kind of float around. It's kind of like that when you get 2,500 people in a lake and they're all swimming in a circle. So that's, as you prepare for your first Iron.
Sounds like a piece of cake, Johnny. Now that I know there's like this drafting thing, I should just I can knock out an Ironman.
Yeah, it's just like it pulls you around. So now as you prepare for your first Ironman, I just want to share that note of encouragement with you.
Oh man, I know. Hey, let's talk fundraising. Let's get off the John Vroman Ironman story and on to fundraising. So let's talk about how you made this happen, because this is pretty amazing. $25,000. I don't remember exactly what the number was, but we can We'll link to that in the show notes because I also want to put out there a challenge to anybody listening to break that record. And we'd love for you to break that record. In fact, Johnny, you know what? We said this before and it hasn't been broken yet, but could we say this again, that if somebody, I'm putting you on the spot here, if somebody breaks your personal fundraising record, could we fly them in and like hang with them for dinner in Philly?
Absolutely. That is a standing offer. I want this record broken immediately. It's then we can focus on interviewing some other people. It'll be good.
We'll link to that. We'll link to that exact number. We'll put it in the show notes on the website, frontrowfactor.com. And that way, if somebody wants to break it and come have dinner with Johnny and I, we would love to do that. Let's talk about you're raising 25K. I mean, this was huge, massive donation to the charity. We felt it. I mean, I remember our team was just blown away by the money coming in that you were creating from this event. How did you do this, man? How did you recruit such a massive level of support for the event? I know earlier you said it was 25K raised in 10 days, but really this was 25K raised over 364 days. I would even venture to say that I bet you this is 25K raised over your lifetime, because at a lot of the relationships that you've been pouring into for, decades now, people are probably chomping at the bit as a way to try to thank you or support you in some of the things you do. I think you give a lot, but talk to us about how you recruited this team and how did you rally this way?
So I'll speak to a couple of things here that I think are worth noting. And I think as we consider answering this question, I think you've touched on something powerful, which is I believe that the philosophy that's, critical, I know you're going to talk about it a lot in the book, but the concept of who is in your front row, that question is so important. I think if we're intentional about thinking about who are the people we love, who are the people that have impacted us, who are people that have made a difference in our lives, and giving attention and time in those areas. And then thinking about who are people we like, admire, and respect. And one of the things that I feel I learned at a young age is I remember I was getting a promotion, and I was really nervous about the job because the job was something I had never done before. And my good friend Al Leonardo gave me this advice. He said, Johnny, I know you don't know what you're doing, but remember this, relationships are the key. They're the key to being good at the job, and they're the key to being happy in the job. And it was funny because I didn't know anything about some of the functions of the job, but I set about saying, well, let me just try to make some connections. So to anybody on the call today, I don't know where you are in your life with your thinking about relationships, but the point is being intentional about connecting with people, listening to people, serving and supporting people has been something I've loved. It's something I've loved. I enjoyed it. And I will tell you, there are times in your life, you may be blessed with times in your life where you get a chance to see who shows up in your life when life is really knocking you down. And I've shared with many of you who know me personally know that my youngest brother, Michael, passed away at age 21 of a drug overdose. It was a tragic time. It was a tragic time in life and sad. And the story that I want to tell is about seeing how many people showed up to support me during that time. And I remember thinking, it was around like the time in 2008 when the markets were crashing. And I remember thinking like my financial investments were in bad shape. And then a few days later, my brother passed away, and I got to see this outpouring of support. And then I remember thinking, wow, my investments are just fine. So one of the things I want to share with anyone is if you want to raise money or a cause or do something great, I think the best thing that you can do is focus on the type of friend that you're being, the type of way you're serving others. And, Mark Lovis, a former great in our company, talked about the concept of being off self and on purpose. That's hard for us because by nature we're selfish. At least I am. And, I think others might be able to relate to that. So, around the time my brother passed away, I remember doing fundraising, getting excited about walking 1,000 miles in a year and every day going out and thinking about my brother and raising money that way. And what I remember seeing is that when you have a cause that's from the heart, people want to support it. So I think a tip I would give to everybody today is connect with something personal that so others can connect with it and tell them why it matters. So over the course of fundraising for the Ironman, I had many one-on-one conversations just sharing why I was excited about this, why I wanted to do it. So when the time came to hit the email, I had done a lot of work ahead of time by sharing the dream, sharing my fears, and kind of just essentially recruiting people in with me, wanting to feel like that on that day, there were people I could think about. On the actual day, one of the things I'll share with you is on the run, I set my intention to think about one person each mile that has had an impact in my life in a major way, and to kind of think about that person and dedicate a mile to each person. Halfway through the run, I went into a gear bag that I got, and I grabbed a picture of my brother Michael and my brother David, and I carried that with me to the finish line. Interesting story, too, is I also grabbed the front row T-shirt that I was going to wear at the finish line. And for Jeff Bry, he's excited because the shirt I was wearing was a Midwest region shirt he had given me promoting the Midwest region. But my plan was to put on a front row shirt right before the finish line. But what happened is I went to the porta potty right before the finish line, and it fell in the porta potty. And as much as I love the Front Row Foundation, there was no way I was reaching in there and grabbing that shirt and running the last couple miles with it. So I want to apologize to you. You were nice enough to get me like a Front Row bike jersey. And in the end, I ended up wearing awesome Midwest region jersey. But the Front Row Foundation was donated to the porta potty about a mile or two from the finish line. So anyway, I digress from fundraising. But the point I want to make is this. By the time I pushed the button to send that email, a lot had happened. And the key things, I think, in my 30s, there were things, there's just things that I never knew when I was 30 I'd be doing an Ironman, but I knew I liked people. And sometimes I hear people say things like, I got too many people in my life and I don't need any more relationships. And it is true. When you've got a lot of people in your life, it can be busy and it can be overwhelming, but your friends know you love them. And, it's not like you got to talk to everybody all the time, just a simple text or an email, or there's a lot of ways to show love to people by just simple ways. And, I've been blessed with a lot of good friends in my life. I think what's amazing is that to be able to show up for this Ironman, I'm going to finish with this story about you today. Many of you know that our family experienced a really difficult time around 2011. And there was a period of time where I needed some support. And I remember during that time, you were living in Virginia Beach. And one of the things that happened is you made a decision to rent your home in Virginia Beach and move back to New Jersey to support me and my family at that time. And I remember thinking when you did that I didn't know how I'd ever be able to repay you for what you did for me. There were many others that stepped up at that time also. But I can tell you that, one of the things that inspired me to do this was thinking, how could I send a message to you of the love and commitment I have for you as a friend, for the Front Row, and how can we have an impact on people? I'm looking right now at the picture of Chris Casey with his family. And if you know this story, go watch the video on the Front Row website. Watch the Chris Casey story. And that's one of the recipients that was able to be, that you guys were able to support with some of the funds. And I can tell you what, I think about being a father with 3 children. I think about the idea of not being able to be with my kids. That is I can't even wrap my brain around that. And here's an amazing father, amazing coach, amazing person in this community. And I just think about the fact that by doing this one little thing, a lot of things happen. And John, what I want to encourage you about is I know sometimes as a leader, as a speaker, it's easy for people to think like, hey, he's got it all together. He's perfect. He's living this perfect life. Watching you struggle and grow and build and go through this process is incredible when I think about the impact that you've had on the world. I remember at a time when you were thinking about leaving your great job, and I remember thinking like you might be able to help not only our company but the world so much more by leaving and doing this big thing. And it turns out that that's true. And before we wrap up today, I just want to let you know that you inspire me with your courage, your life's work, and continuing to share the message and vision of this. And it's my hope that we can light a spark for individuals out there to see that they can step up, step into a space, and do something that is an expression of their love and their heart and support not just the front row, but anything. But I got to tell you, we love your help here with the front row. It would bless me and honor me to know that someone said, hey, man, I'm going to go do something, and we're able to help more people. That's the mission. So, Johnny, thank you.
Dude, well, this has been great. JK, I know that you've got another appointment that you've got to run to. So I'm going to wrap up this interview here with some final thoughts about you, my friend. And I want to say, first of all, you've managed to say the names of about 25 people on this call. And I think that it's great to make note of that for everybody listening, that that's just very evident of how you operate in life is by shining the light. We said it earlier, and then it's just demonstrated time and time again throughout the call with every person that you brought to light, from Angie to Dustin to Chris Casey, and it just, the list goes on. And literally that list would be never ending. And we could have a 4-hour call and those names would still keep showing up. I know there's hundreds of people that you would have liked to talk about today that we didn't even get a chance to talk about. I want to say that, dude, you are somebody who's making a massive difference in the world, specifically in my world. I feel it regularly, man. I love you. You're a brother. Really appreciate you taking the time to talk today about your experiences. I appreciate you raising money for the charity. I appreciate your counsel. I appreciate you being a role model. And I just love that we're able to raise our families together and go through this life together. It's going to be fun, man, to see what we continue to build throughout the years. I'm pumped about the Front Row Factor book project. I'm pumped about the dad's retreat. There's so many things on the horizon that are exciting. And there's so many things right now that are exciting about the building of those projects. So, brother, thank you. I honor you. You're definitely shaping a world that my kids and everyone else's kids are growing up in. It's a better place because you're in it. And hey, one last final question before we send off. What live concert or show or performance would you most want to see front row? I don't even know the answer to this. I should know.
Well, hey, it's got to be One Direction, right? I mean, what do you think? It's either that or Led Zeppelin. I'm not sure. It's a toss-up. So there you go.
Awesome, man. Hey, well, listen, JK, I was sure you were going to say Guns N' Roses. I was sure you're not Guns N' Roses. Not Guns N' Roses.
You know, they kind of let their fans down for 20 years and didn't show up. So I think showing up's important.
Showing up is important.
Showing up's important. So I don't know. My favorite front row event concert is the next one I get to go to you with. How's that? Let's get it scheduled.
Dave Matthews next year, buddy. Love you. Enjoy your day. We'll chat again soon.
All right, brother. Take care. Love you.
That was awesome. And now you know why I love John Kane so much. So many awesome ideas shared today. When we traveled down the road with John, how he set a goal to do this Ironman, talked about setting your sights on something so big that it scares you, but that how you can find power in creating purpose around your activity. How when he tied it to Front Row Foundation, then it wasn't just about him. It was about making a difference to so many others and honoring so many other people, creating experiences for so many other people. We talked about how he never felt ready really through the whole thing, but he just kept having faith and kept training and kept getting the right people, the right coaches, the right support structure. I love when he said, I did not do an Ironman. About 500 people did an Ironman. It just goes to show, I mean, you heard that through today's call. John kept referencing specific people that have been instrumental in his life in different ways, and how people have inspired him and taught him, and people that he's connected with and built with over time. He is truly a master at building amazing relationships. And I think there was so much great stuff. I would encourage you to go back and listen to this one again. And then I would encourage you to share this episode with somebody that you think would benefit. I'd also encourage you to go to frontrowfactor.com/John-Kane, or just go to frontrowfactor.com/podcast and you'll see a show right there. We'll put links to the stories that we referenced or any resources. And we'll also put stuff there about how if you do know somebody now, or you're connected to somebody that is fighting a life-threatening illness, maybe they could be a Front Row recipient. Maybe we could create an event for them. So you can nominate somebody through our website, frontrowfoundation.com. fundraised.org. And we'll link to all that in the show notes. And also, if you wanted to host a fundraiser, if you're part of our community or you want to be part of our community and you want to help fund these experiences that we talked about today for somebody else in need, well, then just email us and we'll give you the details of how to do it. info@frontrowfoundation.org. And somebody from our team will get back to you about how you can host a fan fundraiser. We have people all over the country, all over the world, really, that have stepped up to raise money for the charity. And that's how we make these events possible. So Josh and Amy Muller, who referenced on today's call, hosting a 4th of July party and then turning it into a party with a purpose. And I think it's just so awesome. I also wanted to mention that if you want to stay connected to John Kane, he will be at the Dad's Retreat October 14th and 15th in Philadelphia. This is a 2-day event. It's a very small invite-only experience for guys that want to be epic dads in life. I have a belief that when people say, what do I do? My job is a father. And everything else I do is sort of secondary to that. It's that my mission is to be a great dad, and I go to work so that I show my kids how to serve and how to lead and how to earn and provide. But my main primary objective here is to be a great dad. And one day I remember looking at my computer, and this is when I was not operating with these set of principles. I looked at my computer and I had a folder for everything, the charity and my business, speaking, coaching. I had a folder for taxes, etc., except I didn't have one for my kids. And I thought, why don't I have that? Why don't I put the same amount of planning and attention and effort and energy into raising amazing boys? And so I'm creating an event that I would want to attend. So for the last 20 years, I've been hosting events, live events and experiences. And this is a skill set I have. And I thought, wow, I've got this great community of guys and nobody else is doing these dads events. So I'm going to put together a dads, experience in Philadelphia. And we've already filled it halfway. And I will tell you, if you're interested, just shoot me an email, john@frontrowglobal.com. And I would love to tell you more about our dad's experience in Philadelphia. It's going to be 2 days of incredible guys. And I will tell you that this is a lineup of incredible human beings. You want to be in that room if you're a dad. This is an investment you can't afford not to make. Also, I want to share with you that we're going to keep putting out great shows with great guests, and we want your suggestions. What topics do you want to hear about? Who do you want to hear from? It could be anything. It could be about being a dad. It could be about finances. It could be about whatever. We want to know what you want to hear more about. So just email me. Again, john@frontrowglobal.com. It's JON@frontrowglobal.com. That's it for today, everybody. Just 3 final requests, and that is that you share this episode with somebody that if you are having a good time and enjoying the show, we want to hear about it. So just leave us an iTunes review, frontrowfactor.com/review, and you'll get right to us. And catch me on social. Let's connect. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, @John Vroman, JONVROMAN. And I can't wait to have you back on a future show. Until next time, keep celebrating life front row style. Adios for now.
That's all for this episode of the Front Row Factor. To discover more simple and effective ways to lead a fearless front row life, visit frontrowfactor.com and subscribe to John's 4 Minutes in the Front Row, where he shares quick stories from real-life experiences. Thanks again for joining us today. We hope our show inspires you to live big, give big, and experience life to the fullest. See you next week on the Front Row Factor.